Now, in today's clip, we're going to have a look at our last market structure, oligopoly, from the Greek word oligos, meaning few. In fact, that becomes the key focus, if you like, of our analysis here. So what does this market structure look like? Key word, few, or even fewness, where we're talking about a market structure where 2, 3 or 4 maybe large firms dominate the market. So if we add their total output together, 70, 80 or even 90% of total output comes from only a handful of firms. Now, this is interesting, this market structure, because the product can either be identical or homogeneous or differentiated. And we'll have a look at that in our examples in a minute. Now, here's the intriguing thing about oligopolies, right? Mutual interdependence. So what we're saying here when we look at this fewness aspect is that each firm must be acutely aware of what their rivals are doing. So we need to know what the opposition's up to, and we also need to have, if you like, a little strategy or plan in mind as to what the opposition might do if we do something with regards to changing our pricing structure. What will be their reaction? So there's a need to be strategic here. Entry barriers do exist, so you might need large amounts of startup capital to go head to head with some of these oligopolists, and we'll see why that might be in a minute. Non-price competition, e.g. advertising. Yes, in fact, a lot of advertising goes on with respect to product differentiation. Have a look down here. What are we talking about? Industries, for example, the finance industry, where in Australia, for example, we talk about the big 4 banks. So the big 4 add together their total contribution to industry output, and the big 4 make up about 70% of all financial products and services in Australia. So despite the fact that there are many, many other banks and many, many non-bank financial intermediaries, this is a industry which is oligopolistic. Fast food in Australia, for example, McDonald's, Hungry Jack's, KFC, Pizza Hut, the big 4 dominate. Now, it doesn't mean there's no room in the marketplace for smaller players, but again, the combined output of the big 4 would be the significant contributor to industry output. Athletic clothing and footwear, supermarkets, even airlines and telcos, they slip into this category as well. So, what do we want to do here? We want to try and share with you our insights with respect to how we think oligopolists behave. Now, importantly, I've asked George to construct a little segment for you on one of our little analytical tools called a kinked demand curve. So it's kinked demand curve. Make sure you watch that one. Very, very important and very useful. I'm going to walk you through another way that we look at how we think oligopolists behave. We're going to use this payoff matrix, which I've replicated from our textbook, from Bajada et al. And I'm going to walk you through a simple little, what we call game theory, if you like. So we're imagining a special oligopoly, namely two firms, which would be a duopoly, right? So we've got giant and we've got big. And this is what we call our payoff matrix. And I'm going to walk you through each of these boxes, if you like. Each company has got a simple choice. They either adopt a high price strategy or a low price strategy. And what we're going to show is that the expected payoffs will depend upon what the other player is doing. So what we're trying to do is to really highlight this mutually interdependent nature of this market structure. So pretty simple. Box A, what's happening? Well, both giant and big are charging a high price, and they might do that independently of each other, or in a second we'll talk about what they might do collusively. But B, box B tells us that if giant adopts a low price, they can actually raise their industry profits to 15 million as long as big stays high, right, they'll go to 15 and big will see their profit share fall to 6. So that outcome is good for giant, but it does depend on big staying high. Now, for big, if they go low, they see their market share or their profit share rise to 15 million, and of course that's a good outcome for them, but that depends on giant staying high. What do we find in box D? Probably, if you like, the most likely outcome. In fact, we call this box, if you like, we call it the maxi-min strategy, where both companies are maximising their minimum payoffs. So giant goes low, big goes low, and they end up with $8 million in industry profits apiece. Now, let's come back here for 1 second. What if they did something illegal, naughty? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Let's both charge a higher price. Now, this would be called collusion. It's a breach of the Trade Practices Act in Australia. It's the sort of thing that attracts the interest of what we call the consumer watchdog. In Australia, that's our ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumers Commission, and most Western countries will have a government arm that does exactly that, namely monitor the potentially anti-competitive behaviour of big companies like this. But let's say they go ahead and do that, right? We can see that's a more optimal outcome for both companies. They raise their profit levels collectively. But even if they do, let's go back to boxes B and C. B and C remind us that there's an incentive for Giant to actually break the collusive agreement, go low and pinch market share off Big, because Big's gone high. Or alternatively, the incentive for Big is to cheat and achieve the same outcome. So again, where are they likely to end up? Down here in what we sometimes call the Nash equilibrium, after the famous mathematician John Nash. Their maxi-min strategy will be to actually go low in order to protect market share. Now, a couple of things, let me remind you. This is a simple duopoly game. In the real world, of course, our oligopoly market structures are more complex because there are quite often 3 or 4 major players, and of course there are also global markets where firms are competing and international laws are harder to enforce with respect to collusive tendencies. Couple of things. Firstly, go back, make sure you look at George's kinked demand curve analysis. Very, very important. And also check your textbook for other models of oligopoly behaviour. For example, particularly the price leadership model, where there's evidence of tacit collusion, where one firm emerges as being the dominant leader and the other firms look to that firm to actually drag the price up in the market so they can go for a little ride on their coattails. That's another intriguing aspect of oligopoly behaviour. So make sure you check your textbook, make sure you check George's video.